runner's high is a familiar phenomenon to regular exercisers, yet the mental health benefits of working out are not wholly accepted and sometimes not even known outside the fitness industry. Now, this could in part be due to the fact that despite there being an abundance of evidence to confirm that exercise can help to prevent many conditions such as heart disease, osteoporosis, stroke and arthritis, there's not been quite so much research into its impact on brain function and illnesses such as clinical depression. However, if it's estimated that around 1 in 4 adult Americans has some form of mental disorder and 1 in 17 has a serious mental illness, then isn't it worth investigating how exercise can play a role in keeping your mind in as good shape as your body? A self-help programme will really prove its worth, especially if you consider that the National Alliance on Mental Illness reports that state legislatures have cut billions off mental illness budgets and look to continue that trend for at least the next few years. So, over the next 30 minutes, I want to take you with me as I explore psychological well-being and attempt to convince you to follow my philosophy, and that is, move your body to change your mind. You're about to discover a guaranteed route to finding your own feel-good factor. The World Health Organization gives the following definition. Health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. This broad statement clearly indicates that mental health is one of the platforms for good quality of life. It describes how we feel about ourselves and others, as well as how we think. It reflects our ability to build and maintain relationships with others, and also how we accommodate change in our lives. Now, sadly, the statistics I mentioned earlier indicate the medical fraternity is facing significant numbers of patients with mental disorders, including, surprisingly, 20% of children, according to the US Surgeon General. The most common condition is depression, often in a mild form, characterized simply by feelings of anxiety and low esteem that can lead to decreased productivity at work, high business costs due to absenteeism, and financial strains on secondary health care services. Fortunately, exercise has the potential to make a difference by directly treating and preventing the more common mental disorders, and also improving both health and quality of life for sufferers. And this is supported by the Mental Health America organization, who lists regular physical activity as one of the key tools in living your life well. Whilst a single exercise bout can tackle a temporary or acute negative mood state, more ingrained conditions, referred to as being chronic, will take weeks or even months for exercise to have an uplifting effect. Before we look at individual conditions and how exercise can help to tackle such, let's take a moment to understand the organ involved here, the brain. The average brain weighs around 3 pounds, is made up mostly of water, and contains in the region of 100,000 blood vessels, has approximately 100 billion neurons, and uses about 20% of your oxygen supply. Now, neurons are the cells that combine to form the nervous system and transmit information via both electrical and chemical means, and are responsible for the estimated 70,000 thoughts we have each day. The good news is that we can continue to grow neurons throughout our life if we constantly challenge ourselves to learn new facts, figures, activities and skills. Here are 2 facts about your brain that you may not know, and I actually find these absolutely amazing, also slightly amusing. Each time we blink, the brain actually kicks in and holds the previous image just for a split second, so we never notice the darkness. I bet you're blinking right now and trying, aren't you? Also, no matter how hard you try, you'll never be able to tickle yourself, as your brain can differentiate between your touch and unexpected touch. Now, since we've established that taking on new challenges will lead to proliferation of the neurons and so a more powerful brain, here's your challenge. I want you to try and find an opportunity to slip those 2 useful or useless, however you look at it, facts into your next dinner party, work social event or family gathering. So let's now look at the anatomy in a little bit more detail. Let's start with the lower part of the brain the stem that connects to the spinal cord. This is responsible for your heartbeat, for breathing, for digestion, and for circulating the blood around your body, but also for keeping you awake and alert. The cerebellum is the bottom rear portion and governs movement via controlling your balance and muscle contractions. The frontal lobe, not right at the front, but sort of top and front here, determines your emotions and is the logical part involved in solving problems, planning, organising, that kind of thing. When we move to the back here, we've got what's called the occipital lobe, and this is where we process visual information. It makes sense of the shapes and the colours you see. If we go right onto the top here, we've got the parietal lobe, and that's split into two sections, right and left. It's concerned with your spatial awareness on the right side, and on the left side with language. This is also where we find the primary sensory cortex that controls the sense of touch. Like the parietal lobe, there are two temporal lobes, one on each side, and they're at about the level of the ears. Yeah? The right lobe is involved in visual memory, whilst the left is more for verbal memory. Now, clearly my focus is on exercise and whether it can affect the brain, and if so, how does this happen? The facts are very encouraging indeed, with a 2001 study of over 5,000 women revealing that those who adhered to a programme of walking noted a lesser decline in their cognitive function. Now, the wealth of research out there, however, is in the area of child brain health, with research in 2003 linking physical activity to improved IQ, grades and verbal skills, and a further study in 2008 suggesting the improvements achieved as youth could then extend into adulthood. Now, this certainly questions the wisdom of the policy in some schools to reduce time allocated to recreation in favour of more classroom time with the goal of improving academic performance, especially as one particular experiment proved that high school seniors partaking in 7 hours of sport and exercise achieved higher grades, got along better with their parents and had lower drug usage than their peers who did less exercise. It appears that exercise mostly affects the areas of the brain associated with memory, organisation, performing more than one task, and handling doubt or uncertainty. As these are the areas that are known to significantly decline with age, the value of exercise in maintaining our marbles in later years becomes evident. The experts suggest that a combination of cardiovascular, strength and flexibility training is probably the most effective recipe for inducing positive change, which is very good news since, as you may remember from the very first presentation in this series, these are the components of a healthy body also. Now we can see the basis for the well-used Latin quote, mens sana in corpore sano, which means a sound mind in a healthy body. One of the list of things the Roman poet Juvenal suggested we should all desire in life. It is the mix of the three different exercise modes that is thought to encourage a wide spectrum of neural and chemical changes, including growth of new nerve cells, that has been shown to improve brain function. In fact, Van Praag, a pioneer in this field, suggests that exercise could be the most potent of factors in new cell generation, particularly in the area of the brain responsible for learning and memory. In addition, exercise results in an increase in the number of neurotransmitters, the chemicals responsible for conveying nerve impulses between neurons in the brain. Finally, as we've seen, cardiovascular exercise can lead to the formation of new blood vessels, so improving the supply of oxygen to the brain and thereby enhancing its capability. It can be said then that exercise affords a neuroprotective value. But let's now consider whether it has a role in the treatment of certain conditions. So depression is the most common form of mental disorder and can affect sufferers to differing degrees. I asked our expert on stress, Robert Sapolsky, to talk to us about depression and exercise.
One of the things we absolutely know from a gazillion studies in this field is major depression is as biological of a disorder as is juvenile diabetes. And you don't sit down a diabetic and say, oh, come on, what's with this insulin stuff? Stop babying yourself. Depression is a biochemical disorder with genetic components, endocrine components. It's a real disease. It's as biological of a disease out there. And amid endless ways in which treatment of depression is inadequate, leaving oceans of people still suffering from it, one of the things that works for a whole lot of people is exercise. Exercise, a lot of those good benefits throughout the brain, in fact, explicitly counteracts some of the neurochemical effects of depression. There's a whole school of thought, and a very credible one these days, those neurotrophins, those growth factors in the brain that are stimulated by exercise. One of the most important ones, it appears as if abnormally low levels of it have something to do with the onset of depression. Boost up those levels, and you are quite plausibly doing a really effective job at combating the depression. Real biological disorder, real physiological solutions for it in some cases. Exercise is way up there on the list.
As Professor Sapolsky points out, exercise can be a useful mode of intervention, resulting in positive physical changes in the brain's chemistry. Indeed, studies suggest that exercise could be a useful component in the treatment matrix, particularly as, unlike some medications, there are no associated side effects. I'm not advocating that you stop all medications by any means. I'm suggesting that you work with your doctor to see if you can supplement your treatment with an exercise regime, since the evidence is strong that it can be helpful. Exercise has been shown to reduce levels of anxiety and stress by helping to dampen the physiological responses to stressful situations. Importantly, it can provide a healthier alternative coping mechanism than alcohol or smoking that are often used when anxious. A number of studies have documented that subjective well-being, the feel-good factor, if you like, is higher in regular exercises. In fact, improved mood and a sense of positive emotions are the most commonly reported effects of exercise. In addition, self-esteem, generally accepted as the most valid single indicator of mental health, is encouragingly susceptible to upward shift as a result of regular exercise, and is an established target outcome of exercise programs in addressing low-level mental disorders such as lack of self-worth. Now, cognitive function in elderly adults has been linked to fitness levels via testing reaction times. And this is of great importance, as those with greater mental alertness are less prone to falls. According to the National Sleep Foundation, around a third of adult Americans suffer sleep problems, with half of those reporting them as being chronic disorders. The good news is that exercising, especially in bright light, has been shown to improve length and quality of sleep for both insomniacs and non-sufferers as well. And as we heard in an earlier lecture, exercising late at night, so long as it's not competitive, should help, not hurt, sleep. Now, in a perfect world, we'd be able to prescribe the appropriate mode of exercise together with the duration and intensity to treat specific conditions. But just as mental illness can present different symptoms in different people, the response to exercise is also individual. Unfortunately, this is a bit of an imprecise science, and it's not possible to define what method of exercise and mix of variables will produce the optimum results for everyone. Also worth considering is how an exercise regime might need to be adapted as an individual progresses through the course of a treatment. Again, something that's impossible to quantify. However, as we mentioned earlier, cardiovascular exercise has been shown to produce positive results physiologically. Resistance training will impact self-perception, and flexibility work will enhance mood through the relaxation effect on anxiety and stress levels. So clearly then, a certain degree of trial and error needs to be applied to discover plans that suit individual preferences and will lead to adherence so that you stick at it, which is vital in the long term. That said, we can pick out a few meaningful guidelines to follow. Firstly, workouts need to be challenging but non-competitive. Try to include a focus on mastering new skills. Look for activities that involve social interaction. And those of you new to exercise need a sympathetic, nurturing approach. So heading out on day one for a boot camp is perhaps not the best approach. If exercise is used this way as part of a treatment package, the Chief Medical Officer in the UK suggests it can be as effective as psychotherapy and medication. This is supported by the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, which recommends 3 workouts per week of 45 to 60 minutes duration, citing the following reasons exercise is so important. Firstly, exercise has fewer negative side effects, as we mentioned earlier, than medication, typically using selective serotonin inhibitors, and actually has several positive side effects, including reduced risk of heart disease, obesity, osteoporosis, stroke, the list goes on. Through regulation of growth factors and reduction of peripheral and central risk factors, exercise also ensures successful brain function. Exercise is a behaviour change that is sustainable, becoming a significant part of a healthy lifestyle. Exercise doesn't carry the stigma that is sometimes linked with treatment with drugs and psychotherapy. Also, exercise can be applied to patients displaying a mix of mental and even physical conditions. What I'd now like to do is just take a moment to consider a specific illness that, according to the Alzheimer's Association, affects over 5 million Americans, although this is actually predicted to rise quite considerably, with estimates of 13 million by the year 2050. In addition to causing distress to family members who see how it affects a loved one, it can also lead to high levels of stress, as those same family members often end up having to take on the caregiver's role, hence me wishing to single this out for particular consideration. Whilst we know that our brains, just like our bodies, will change with age, difficulty in retaining newly learned information is a common early sign of Alzheimer's. Symptoms worsen as the condition progresses, leading to confusion, to mood swings, and even difficulty accepting help from family and friends. One of the biggest issues in treating sufferers is that they don't recognise or accept that they have the condition, which is particularly concerning because early diagnosis and treatment can make a dramatic improvement in the quality of life. Now, research at Washington University in St. Louis has now shown that exercise is one of the treatments that should be considered. Although the exact mechanisms by which exercise affects sufferers, as we said earlier, is still somewhat vague, the study concluded that exercise should be recommended as a counter to Alzheimer's symptoms, but also that it could provide preventive care. A study of exercising mice at the University of South Carolina may have one answer to how exercise could help in these circumstances. The study's outcomes suggest that exercise training increases brain mitochondrial biogenesis. This may have important implications for some central nervous system diseases and age-related dementia that are often characterized by mitochondrial dysfunction. Interestingly, while the exercise in mice showed significant increases in brain activity, the sedentary mice didn't show any comparable activity in the brain cells. It's also been suggested that physical activity has beneficial effects on the hippocampus that plays a role in memory function. The amount of exercise that seems to make a difference is, fortunately, in line with the American Heart Association's recommended guidelines, i.e. 30 minutes 5 times per week. If you consider the demographic shift in the population now towards a more elderly profile, then clearly Alzheimer's is going to become more common. So the stock value of exercise becomes even greater. Now, I hope you'll forgive me in going off at a tangent here to record a personal story that I wish to share with you regarding the mental approach to physical activity. In 1991, if you can remember that far back, I took the summer off work to prepare for the World Karate Championships, which were in the first week of September, having already secured my place in the Great Britain squad. Now, I was training 3 times a day, which is quite a hard program to set oneself. And I set out with the philosophy that I would try and put in the time and effort to ensure that at the event I could really give of my best. I just wanted to be the best I could be. Now, a few weeks in, however, my mindset began to change, and I developed a almost a sort of siege mentality to get me through the hard sessions, constantly telling myself that due to the global time differences, somebody, somewhere, right at that moment was training, and I might have to fight him at the tournament. So this actually worked for me because it helped keep me to what was essentially a very arduous schedule. Now, just prior to the event, this had developed even further, to me actually thinking I was going to win, despite the fact that at that point I was only ranked 3rd in Great Britain, let alone in the world, and I'd never won a major tournament. Now, on arriving in Calgary the week before the event, I felt good, and the whole squad, we worked together well, getting, our final preparations done ready for the tournament. Now, there was something different about the World Championships in Calgary, as it's traditional to award trophies for joint 3rd place, i.e. the losing semi-finalists would both go home with a cup. But here, the organisers decided upon a fight-off for a single 3rd place. Now, this is important because, for me, one of my motivations, my mother has a trophy room, so for me, I needed to come back from tournaments with a cup for her to put in her trophy room. So, after battling my way through the first day of the competition, including a couple of particularly tough fights, I was preparing for the semi-final against the Swedish champion, who, at 6 feet and 11 inches, and also being the European champion at the time, was actually the favourite to win the whole title. Now, a close friend of mine, Sean Roberts, another member of the Great Britain squad, he's now actually teaching karate in Hawaii, mentioned to me that despite my gallant efforts, I'd got through to the semi-final. He said, I don't want to worry you, but you're not guaranteed to take home any spoils because, this unique decision that you have to fight off for your 3rd place. However, without any hesitation or any doubt in speech or thought, I simply looked him in the eye and replied that it didn't matter to me because I was going to win the semi-final and the final. Now, he looked at me and sort of, held my gaze for a second and then just walked away. Now, the next time I spoke to Sean was just after coming off the arena, having won the final. And he was the first person within the squad to run on and congratulate me. And the first thing he said to me was, "You meant it, didn't you?" Now, the purpose of me recounting this tale for you is to introduce a final topic, which is imagery, allowing us to look at what it is, whether it works, and if so, how can non-elite athletes use it for gain? Imagery is defined as using some or all of our senses to create an experience in our mind. The point of this being that the brain interprets it as a real situation, so we'll be prepared with the appropriate responses if and when it does actually happen. There's certainly an abundance of scientific and academic evidence to support the positive effects of using mental training techniques, but the problem is that it can't really be measured, so it's a little bit of a grey area. Now, using it in the moments directly before an event is known as getting psyched, and it was shown in research in 2008 to have a distinctly favourable influence on performance. Now, the reason for me straying into this area is that the author of this study also suggested that imagery can be used beyond physical endeavours to enhance confidence, to boost motivation and to reduce anxiety. So, to make this work for yourself, you need to adopt a similar approach to working out, starting with the setting of goals. And we cover goals in a little more detail in a different lecture. So for now, start by defining the things that you can aim for on a daily basis, giving you something to focus on. These bite-sized mini goals could be as simple as deciding to take the stairs a bit faster every week until you can run up them, or not to let yourself get wound up by others' actions at work. Instead, doing lunges behind your office door every time you're upset. To help you with this, here are a few steps you can try. Try to identify your negative thoughts, acknowledge them, and then propose to yourself a solution. Imagine feeling hungry, but you don't want to sabotage a weight loss plan. So firstly, accept that you feel hunger, but then make the conscious decision to eat an apple to tide you over to your next meal. You may still carry the same negative thoughts with you even after you've overcome them, so try to diminish them by focusing on the positive things in your life. picture yourself turning down the volume switch on your problem, as if it were a radio bringing you a bad news bulletin. Just turn it down. Concentrate on your goals and keep reminding yourself that you can and will achieve them. And I can vouch for that, as the positive reinforcement will serve to drive you on to actually hitting the targets you set yourself each day. Now, let's be honest, it won't be plain sailing, so it's wise to prepare for when things go wrong. In other words, actually try to imagine how you will feel when you miss your goals on a particular day by failing to get to the gym, or eating a piece of cake, or stressing instead of stretching when a presentation goes wrong at work. The key is to be proud of where you are and tell yourself that you have the tools to make things better, so you will be able to knock down those goals tomorrow. And remember that mental fitness is a journey and not a destination, so keep working at it and enjoying the gains you'll undoubtedly make along the way. So in the final minutes, I wish to investigate the recipe for happiness, as surely, if I can simply choose to be happy, I've got it cracked. And surprisingly, the choice really is ours to make, as there's a strong link between outcomes and outlook. We choose our outlook, and it determines the outcomes of whatever we set out to do. And it's easier than you think. So here's my ticket to help you to hop on board the happy train and stay there for the ride of your life. The next time somebody asks you, how are you? Don't reply, I'm not too bad, or I mustn't grumble. Yeah? Rather, tell them you feel great and recount the last good thing that happened to you. If things start to get on top of you during the day, take just 1 minute in a quiet place and write a list of the 5 things that are most important to you. And I'll tell you one thing, I'm pretty sure it won't include whatever it is that's causing you stress. Making decisions is an empowering process. Yeah, so think about a recent decision you made that came good. And remember that you also have the authority, the power to decide to have a good day today. And lead by example. If you want others to love you, love them. If you want to be trusted, trust them. And if you want enthusiasm, be enthusiastic. In other words, be what you want, and what you want will be. Try not to think of work as a chore, something that prevents you from enjoying life. Remember, it's a tool to help you to be happy. It allows you to be creative, to labour and to show others, not to mention yourself, what you can do when you roll up your sleeves. When you feel positive about your work, it's amazing how you will perform, and so the upward spiral begins. Why is it that when a child laughs for no reason, we find it endearing, yet an adult doing the same thing will draw some questions about her or his state of mental health? Laughter is the gatekeeper to happiness. You can't laugh and feel down, which is why the National Health Service in the UK launched a laughter clinic back in the early 90s, convinced that the best happiness of all is the knowledge that happiness needs no reason. Take a few moments just to write down a few things that you're grateful for at the end of each day. More importantly, try to read the list when you wake the next day before setting off to face the new day ahead. In conclusion then, although the precise program design for exercise to impact upon mental health is not certain, there's no question mark hovering over the fact that physical activity is a positive influence on brain function for life. It appears that regular exercise taps into our ability to handle the multitude of challenges that life can throw at us. And to me, that seems like an incredible reward for investing just 30 minutes each day at the gym or at the park. Exercise, it seems, will enable us to feel more alert and therefore more aware and able to savour every second of the day by being present in the moment. Now, it's funny I should say that, because I once read that the word present has 3 meanings: gift, here, and now. Is that pure coincidence? Or could it be that the best gifts in life are actually right here, right now? We just need to learn to recognise and appreciate them.